Hello, and welcome to Overthinking Tech. Today, I want to get Unraid and HotSwap working together. So, for those who are unaware, Unraid by default doesn't really have any way of doing HotSwap. And I'm only kind of getting them working together. My ultimate goal here is to have a HotSwap bay that the bay itself has been passed through to a VM running on my home Unraid server. So how am I going to do this? Well, passing through SATA devices to a VM in Unraid isn't the most straightforward thing. But passing USB devices through is point and click easy. And that's why I just picked up two of these. These are SATA to USB 3.0 converters. I'll throw an Amazon affiliate link in the description. So if you're interested in buying one of these, please use that link. What this comes with is pretty straightforward. You've got a little tiny SATA cable. You get this guy, which is the USB 3.0 end, the SATA end, and then some of these other plugs for older drive SATA type connections that I won't be using. Then you also get a power supply, and these are actually pretty beefy power supplies. What do we got here? 24 watts total, 12 volts, 2 amps. So that should be able to handle any of your SATA devices. You get a little brick thing. There's really not much happening in here. It just converts that 12 volt barrel into either the SATA power connector or a Molex power connector. So voltage divider, 12 volts to 5 volts, pretty basic. Now I've tested this in Windows and that works great. You plug it in, drives, a hard drive is recognized perfectly without any driver installation. I have not tried passing this through to Unraid yet. However, I have a disk drive, a SATA disk drive connected to this device, plugged into a front USB 3 port, and I'm about to see if it is as point and click easy as I'm hoping it is. So, I have an Ubuntu VM set up here. I have gone ahead and changed the USB controller to this USB 3.0. I went with a QEMU. I haven't tested either of these yet, so I don't know if NEC or QEMU is going to be better. We'll get into this and see what works. Firefox always trying to autofill things it shouldn't. But out of the gate, I am pretty happy because I believe they're showing up. It would appear as though it's showing up as this external hard drive device. I'm not sure why, but before plugging it in, I only had 3 USB devices on the system. So let's attempt to add that. Then let's boot up this Ubuntu VM. Fingers crossed. It's amazing how booting an entire OS in like 10 to 15 seconds feels slow now. No, that's actually not not a real DVD. That's the virtual install media that I still have present on here. Now at the moment, I'm not seeing anything, but that's to be expected because I don't have a disk in it. So, give me just a moment. I'm going to pop in a Harry Potter disc and let's see if it finds it. I can hear the disk drive. Ah, there it goes. That is fantastic. So just like that, plugged in right now to a front USB 3 port on my Unraid server, I have a fully functioning disk drive. Amazing. I'm expecting the hot swap drive to be just as easy, but if I encounter any problems, I will let you know. Okay, it's been a few days. I'm no longer awkwardly crouching on the floor. It doesn't work. It kind of works. There is a workaround to make it work. But let's take a look at what the problems are. So, taking a look at the devices present in Unraid, we have these InnoStore devices, two USB devices. These are both of the USB hubs or SATA to USB converters that I have installed. And the problem is that is preventing these from working perfectly. They're made by the same company. They're the same device. So the way Unraid handles assigning USB devices to VMs is using the product and device ID number. And this works fantastically if you have one of a device plugged into a system. But because I have two of them that are the same, they have the same product and device ID. And what happens if we go to VMs and we try to add both of them, which show up as being identical, we hit update. There we go. That's the error I was expecting. This is the first error I got when I tried passing through two identical USB devices. See, the problem is because the devices have the same product ID and device ID, Unraid is incapable of differentiating them. If we look here at this editor, it has both checked. But if we look at the XML, it only has one of them listed because it can only list one device with the same product ID and vendor ID. There's no way around this because there's no way to change the product ID and the vendor ID of a device. There's a workaround to this. We can assign a device based on the bus and device number instead of the vendor ID and the product ID. If we do this, we can go subsystem source Do I remember this off the top of my head? That's the question. Bus 2, device 2. Not port, that needs to be device. Also, I'm drinking a beer because that seems like a good thing to do when stuff doesn't work. Okay, we're in Ubuntu, and if I quickly go and test it, again with Harry Potter, because why not? Good thing I already took the time to rip all of the Harry Potter discs, because I just dropped this one. Face down, so I'm sure it's fine. But if I had my device IDs correct, which I think I did, there we go. Okay, not a problem. We just assign devices based on the bus and the device number. Why is this an issue? Let me show you why this is an issue. So this works fine for the disk drive. If we go to system devices, we can see our disk drive is here, bus 2, device 2. I put in a disk, that doesn't change. I can take the disk out, and that still doesn't change. It's still bus 2, device 2. But bus 2, device 3 is a hot swap bay, and I have a different problem with that one. So I've got this handy little 2.5 inch to 3.5 inch converter for an old laptop drive that I've been using to test stuff. And popping that into the hot swap bay, and then refreshing this page, well, we momentarily lost the second InnoStar device. We no longer have a device 3 listed. If we give it long enough. There we go. There's the hot swapped hard drive. The problem is it moved. It's not device 3 anymore. It's device 4. If I only had one of these devices, then I could use the product ID and the device ID to pass it through to a VM, and hot swap would work fine. I'm guessing that's why Unraid uses that as the default to prevent this exact issue. The problem is when I have two identical devices, I can't do that. And I can't assign the hot swap bay using its bus and device number, because the device number changes every time I swap a drive in and out. So there's only one solution I found to this. Find selected devices to VFIO at boot. This might be something that's exclusive to the beta of Unraid right now, but it is pretty slick. So you can assign PCIe devices, but this includes devices built right into your motherboard. So this USB controller is the USB controller built into the B550 chipset on the motherboard. And we can see that makes sense. Like the MSI Mystic Light device here, that's the RGB controller built into the board. It shows up as a USB device. We also have a Logitech unifying receiver. This is a wireless Logitech keyboard I have plugged into a front USB port right now, also off of the B550 chipset. However, it's not the USB controller off of the CPU. That is this Matisse USB 3.0 controller. And we can see what I've already done is I've ensured that my CyberPower UPS as well as the SanDisk flash drive I boot off of are on that controller. And that's grayed out because it's in use by Unraid. We can't block off the USB controller that we're booting from. It won't work. Unraid needs to be able to access that. But also, you can't block off your main SATA controller on the board if you have any drives plugged into it. You can block off the USB controller. I don't love this solution because, quite frankly, what I probably would have been better off doing from a cost perspective setting is picking up a PCIe SATA card. And most of these are going to be non-RAID. You do need to make sure that yours is non-RAID when using it with Unraid. But I could have just plugged the hotspot bay and the disk drive into the SATA ports on a card like this and passed it through as a PCIe device, as opposed to passing through the USB controller as a device. That being said, I don't feel like spending more money on this right now, and I've already tested this, and this solution works. And I have enough rear USB ports attached to the CPU's USB controller that getting rid of the ones on the motherboard itself isn't really an issue for me. I'm also not using the RGB built into this motherboard because it's in a server case, so why would I do that? But coming here, let's do a reboot. This is the perfect opportunity to sit back and I don't know, drink coffee or beer or something, because now we have to wait. Okay, we're rebooted, and hopefully I didn't lose any video because I forgot that I was recording the stream directly to the Unraid server. Life pro tip: don't shut down a server that you're recording to. It will stop the recording. But we can see now that we've got whatever the green light means. Binding was success. We can no longer see the USB devices present. So any USB devices that were in this can no longer be passed through to any other VMs. When we go to our VMs page and we take a look at what's available, let me just check. Host dev to host dev. Let's get rid of that USB device and click update. That way it won't look for that USB device that we can no longer find. But when we're looking at this page here, we now have fewer USB devices. We only see the devices not in that group that we bound. And we now have under other PCI devices this AMD USB controller. So we can add that, click update, and hang on. I've noticed that this VM has a nasty tendency to try to use DVDs or other unwanted devices as boot devices. I have no idea what it's doing. I don't know. Was a weird one. Literally, if I had Harry Potter in the disk drive, it wouldn't boot. But here we are. We're in Ubuntu. We can pop in. First, the hot swap. Just does seem slightly slower than what I'm used to. Oh. But there we go. Here's the drive I just put in. We can open disks and see this absolutely ancient, by computer standards, Hitachi 320 gigabyte drive. And Harry Potter again. There we go. And Acid Rip has no trouble finding it at all. So, in the end, it does work. I have to give up a USB controller, but even on a B550 system, that turns out to be totally doable. Unraid support for that is better than any other system I've ever used, and it's fully functional. I should have gotten a SATA PCIe card. I have the PCIe slots for it. If I had known I wasn't going to be able to just pass these through as USB devices, that's what I would have done. And that's what I would probably recommend other people do and not take this approach. But for today, it worked.